Don't really have coffee. Hanging on out. She's off schedule. We just follow wherever she goes. We found out that she's dominant, expressive.
What would she do? I mean,
Hi everyone, just a quick message. We are getting kind of full, and so if you happen to be saving a spot, which I'm very sorry, this front of this, or the spot in the front is for me, but if you happen to be saving a spot for somebody, if they're not going to show up soon, if you'd maybe be willing to give it up to somebody who's waiting to come in, or maybe text them and say, could you get here right away? Just because we're, I think, just about at capacity, so thank you. We'll be starting shortly.
Probably not your life.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our presentation today, our first afternoon presentation. Just a reminder, keep your masks on for the presentation, and if you're going to stick around for the next one in this room, you just, like in the morning, make sure you go out and get checked back in. So we're very excited to have Dr. Nicole Hawkins come present for us today. She is a licensed psychologist, and she's provided clinical expertise at Center for Change since 1999, and is currently CEO, overseeing all aspects of the company and clinical program. She is a certified eating disorder specialist and survivor. She has regularly presented on body image and the treatment of eating disorders on a local and national level. Dr. Hawkins developed a comprehensive body image program that focuses on the media, diet industry, plastic surgery, childhood issues, and learning to appreciate one's body. She has been a consultant for magazines and news programs, and her work has appeared in the New York Times, Self Magazine, in 2020. So we're very excited to have Dr. Nicole Hawkins with us here today.
I'm excited to be out. I have not spoken in front of a live audience for over a year, and I used to public speak all the time. So if I lose my voice, you'll know why. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. As Wendy introduced, I've been at the Center for Change since 1999, but I've also been recovered myself. So I had anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating disorder. I've been recovered 29 years myself. And then my son has ARFID, so I kind of say I've covered all the eating disorder bases within my family. So I will talk a little bit about my recovery as I go, but I'm going to give you kind of a basic eating disorder, dieting, body image talk. I will cover some male things, but I'm mostly going to focus on women, but I promise I'm not trying to leave the men out. I just have a short period of time. So I'm going to talk about the power of the media, negative body image, the diet industry, and intuitive eating. So I'll warn you ahead of time. If you're a woman, you may find my presentation triggering. You may feel yourself reacting, and we'll be talking about that. If you're a man or a parent or a father, you could find elements of my presentation maddening. You could get angry. And so those reactions, you probably won't get angry with me, but you'll just get angry. So those reactions are common. So we'll start with this very first picture. This is a model on the runway. She's emaciated, she has bags under her eyes, she does not look very well, and she has paid thousands of dollars to look like that. Our patients spend thousands of dollars in inpatient 24-hour care to not look like that. And so it's such a confusing message for young girls and for women in this country that this is called beautiful, when really we're seeing women kind of dying trying to look like that. So normally at the Center for Change, we don't talk about weights or numbers. We don't talk about that with our patients, but I'm going to break all the rules. I'm going to quiz you guys for a minute. And you don't have to be that polite. If you know the answer, you can just say it out. So who knows the average height of a woman in the U.S.? How tall is she? 5'6", 5'3". You already got it like right off the bat. Usually I have to like do an auction and we get it. So you teach it. You're like, I know this. So 5'3.7". So how many of you are now saying, I am tall? I am like really tall. Okay, how about the average weight of an American woman? How much does she weigh? 180? 160? 145. So just to put it in perspective, when I do this with the patients, they start out at like 120, 125. So the average woman is 5'3.7", weighs 168.5, and wears the size 14. In fact, 2/3 of all American women in this country wear a size 14 or larger. Do you find that in our clothing stores? We don't, right? It's not represented, even though 2/3 of all American women. And then for the average man, there's his. So I've been doing this talk literally for 25 years. And 25 years ago, the average woman was 5'4", so kind of a little shorter, and weighed 144 pounds. So our weight is going up. And I think everyone wants to blame it on food and trans fats, and it's everything we're eating. Food is a teeny part of what's going on. Dieting is a part of what's going on. Anyone know what the biggest factor that's leading to this?
Lack of mobility.
Yes, it's the lack of movement. I usually don't share this data with patients because it's way too triggering, but hopefully I won't trigger you guys. From the 1970s to now, they've looked at portion sizes of our food. We are eating about 200 and 300 calories more a day. So we are consuming more. We are moving though, and I'm not talking about going to the gym. I'm just talking about moving. So we all heard about the quarantine 15. I don't think it was because people were eating more. We were moving less. So as a society from the 1970s to now, they say we're moving 900 calories less a day. I believe it. Ian, who's my friend in the audience, she knows I don't even grocery shop anymore. I just have Walmart deliver it right to my door, right? When I was in graduate school, I'd have to walk and go to the library and find an article, and then I'd have to go to the Xerox machine and copy it. What can I do now? Yeah, I don't have to do anything, right? Even my son, who's in 7th grade, guess how many recesses he has in 7th grade? 0. His only recess is during lunchtime, so him and all of his friends eat super fast so they can go play. My daughter, when she was in middle school, she had 1 PE class a week. Her second class was called Brain Gym, where they actually sit down and talk about being active. So again, yeah, right? So we can kind of see. So the average model, she's 5'11", weighs 117 pounds, and is a size 2. 1.8% of women in the world genetically can look like that. We are shown this BMI, though, about 80% of the time in the media. So we're shown a BMI that doesn't exist. And they've been measuring these stats since the year 1900. It's the largest discrepancy we've ever seen. So basically what we see in the world versus what we're seeing on TV, what we're seeing in social media, doesn't match up. So these are called kind of landmark studies in the area of psychology. You can see how old this first study is. Ended in 1996. Here's my point. In 1996, the average American winner for Miss America and the Playmates, 60% met the criteria for anorexia, 69% of the Playmates met the criteria for anorexia. What is it today? Can you even imagine what it is today? If we look at BMIs, the average BMI used to be a 22, it's now a 16.9. Well, at the Center for Change, to get off our inpatient unit, you have to be a 16.5 BMI. But this is what gets you in Playboy, or what gets you on the Miss America stage. So these are all women that have passed away from eating disorders. Now some of you, I have substance abuse people in here, right? I now have lots of substance abuse. So the number 1 killer of psychiatric illnesses in the past year is what? Opioid deaths. The pandemic, opioid deaths became number 1. Number 2 is eating disorder deaths. Eating disorder deaths are usually higher than opioid deaths, but with the pandemic, that did change this year. The issue when women die from eating disorders, and men, is we usually don't hear about it. It usually doesn't show up on their death certificate. This is a problem, and professionals like myself and families go lobby Congress trying to get this to change. So if you're working with a patient that just restricts, that's all they do. Or we can even say they just binge. But if they just restrict, we could look at their labs, we could look at their EKGs, and we could determine when they could have a medical event. If you're working with a patient that purges, that takes laxatives, or takes diuretics, they could pass away from their eating disorder when? Anytime. The research used to say, well, it takes about 7 days of those behaviors. Then they said, no, I think it's 3 days. Now it's one episode. So not to say exactly what I did in my eating disorder, but I binged and purged throughout the day. I took laxatives, I took diuretics, I took diet pills, and I overexercised all in one day. I'm kind of thankful I'm alive. When I had my eating disorder, I had no idea how deadly it was. And that's part of the problem is people don't know how deadly eating disorders are. So I kind of put the stats up here. And for males, they're completely underrepresented. We know that like 25% of them have anorexia, up to 40% of eating disorder cases are males. But there's one death every 52 minutes. Look at this stat. As many people die from eating disorders as breast cancer every year. Did you guys know that? Yeah, we don't really know that, right? This year alone, $64 million will go to breast cancer research. $11 million will go to eating disorder research because we don't talk about it. And so if you look at back in 2015, this is NIH funding. You can see, so my grandmother had Alzheimer's, 5.1 million people, autism 3.6, schizophrenia 3.4, eating disorders, 30 million people have eating disorders. If you look at money spent though, for Alzheimer's for research, $88. For schizophrenia, $87. For autism, $58. For eating disorders, 73 cents. So in my eating disorder, I had progressive vision loss. I had 20/20 and every year my vision got worse. And then once I recovered, it stayed the same until I hit my 50s. And now I definitely think I need bifocals. But right, it stayed the same. Can I find research on eating disorders and progressive vision loss? No. I can find research on eating disorders and complete blindness. I can find research on eating disorders and retina detachment from purging. I can't find research on progressive vision loss. It's not because it doesn't happen, it's because we're not putting any funding towards it. And why don't we put funding towards it? I think some of this is the sufferer's own fault, and I'll use myself as an example. When I had my eating disorder, as many of my patients feel right now, they thought it was their choice. I thought it was my lifestyle. I even bragged about having one. My patients devote whole websites about having an eating disorder. I think when people get diagnosed with breast cancer, schizophrenia, they're not bragging about it, right? So I think that's part of the stigma, and it's part of, as our patients suffer, is they kind of think it's a choice. So before I was a clinical psychologist, I was actually a neuropsychologist at the VA Medical Center. And when neurosurgeons would do their surgeries, I would be in the room asking patients questions to map out what part of their brain it impacted. So I'm fascinated with the brain. And so we're going to do a little review, especially for you that work in substance abuse. You'll want to know all this research. So this is a slice of the frontal lobe. And then we're going to look at the prefrontal cortex. That's the top of the brain. In this picture, you want to see lots of yellow and red. That means the brain's working. So what does the prefrontal cortex do? Yeah, it's our CEO of our brain. It does everything. It's really, really important. So executive functioning, knowing if this is good or bad decision. Should I do this? So all of you that have teenagers right now, remember your teenager's prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. This is why we pay more for their car insurance, because Progressive has learned my daughter doesn't know the difference between good and bad, right? Planning of complex cognitive behaviors and thinking about future consequences. If I do this now, if I restrict now, I could have osteoporosis in the future. I didn't think about that. I didn't care about that. Oh, if I'm purging, I could rupture my esophagus and bleed out before I can even get surgery. Was I thinking about that? No, I wasn't thinking about that. So if you ever work with a patient that purges blood, they need to go to the emergency room, okay? They can bleed out. So personality expression. Every patient or substance abuser you work with, you may think they have borderline personality disorder. You're referring them to DBT. Why? Because they can't regulate their emotions. Think about your teenagers. They get super escalated or they get really sad. They have a hard time regulating their emotions. Ongoing decision-making, moderating social behavior. This is why my patients don't pick up on how upset their families are with them. This is why when my 14-year-old patient is sitting at the dinner table, Her mom is in tears because she won't eat. Her brother gets up and runs out of the room because he's so mad. And she's going, what? Why are people so upset? She can't understand how her behavior impacts others. And then, of course, impulse control. This is why if I get out of my 28-day rehab program, someone offers me cocaine, am I going to have the ability to say, no, I think I'm good? No, I have a hard time controlling my impulses. Okay, so we want to see lots of yellow and red. Now I'm going to show you an eating disorder brain. If you work with substance abusers, this is their brain too. So this is what you're seeing. Does this mean our patients and our clients are dumb? No. I still went to a very competitive college, graduated top of my class in my eating disorder. But go back, how was I doing with all these other skills? Not very well, right? So our patients are still competent, but when it comes to these things, they are not. So here's a brain 90 days in treatment. It's starting to recover. So this means if you can keep your patient in some kind of structure for 90 days, that is going to help them. Now, when I had my eating disorder, there were 2 eating disorder programs in the country, Renfrew and Bermuda. Center for Change was the 3rd. I didn't get to go to eating disorder treatment. I didn't go to 90 days of structure. So my outpatient team had to create structure for me. So creating structure. So I do entire groups on relapse prevention and structure in that. So that's kind of what the brain looks like. And so we know with adolescents that have eating disorders, it takes 1 year to fully recover their brain to look normal. With adults, how many years? 5. That's why the relapse rates are so high. And when I train new therapists or when I train new staff, they're like, oh my gosh, it's the same patients over and over and over, right, Ian? Don't they say that all the time? It's the same rehabs. Well, you know why? Because it's really hard. And this is definitely more complex than them just eating. Their brain needs to recover. So we've all seen these when I don't go to the grocery store anymore, but if some of you do, you maybe see these when you go to the grocery store. How about these images? How old are these little girls, and why is this in Vogue magazine? This is not a joke. This was not some special elementary school edition. Basically, marketers have learned in order to trigger women and get us to buy more products, they need to show thinner and thinner images. They can't find 17-year-olds to represent this thin of images, so they're now using 10 and 11-year-old girls. How about this woman in this little teeny red bikini? Does anyone know who she is? She was Miss Universe. After she was crowned, this is her at the Miss Universe pageant. After she was crowned, the pageant officials got together and they said, oh, maybe we should set some minimum BMI requirements. She's awfully thin. I think her BMI was literally a 13. She would barely qualify to come into my inpatient facility, but she was Miss Universe. Okay, how about this young woman here in the blue bikini top and yellow skirt? I say young woman, but she's actually not a woman. So, for those of you that don't know who she was the US's youngest runway model. This is Garen at age 12. She was 6 feet tall. So there's a documentary about her called America the Beautiful where they follow her from age 12 to age 16, where she finally goes through puberty. In this picture, she's missing baby teeth, which my 13-year-old has had 3 baby teeth pulled, so you wouldn't want to see him smile, but that's why she's not smiling. So in this country, you have to be a 6 foot tall 12-year-old who hasn't went through puberty to be thin enough to model. And then when she did go through puberty, they measured her hips and told her she was 3 centimeters too fat to model. Okay, how about Nicole Kidman? You guys know who she is? Okay, I promise I just don't read the National Enquirer, but it says her secret medical tests. So what was she diagnosed with at age 40? Osteoporosis. Now, I have never treated Nicole Kidman, so I don't know how she got osteoporosis, but I can imagine from malnutrition. So this is the damage we do in our eating disorders that we don't see. So some of you won't be able to see what I'm going to do, but I always like to act this out so you can know that we don't punish our patients and we're not mean. But I'm going to show you what a 26-year-old patient did in our facility She was on a basement floor, but we do have padding and carpet. So she was down on her hands and knees, like this, and I don't know what they were doing, but they were like this. She fell over, like this, on a padded, carpeted floor. What happened to the 26-year-old patient? She broke her hip would be a great guess. She shattered her entire pelvis at 26 years old. So we had to send her to a long home rehabilitation center for 9 months for her pelvis to heal. Now, one of my patients, she's 20 years old. You know those big round balls you can get at like Harmon's or Walmart, those big, okay, 20 years old. She kicked a ball in the backyard on our RTC. And I don't even know if you know she did this. She kicked the ball. Guess what she did? She broke her foot. The same patient, against my better judgment, I told the family not to take her to Hawaii last month because I don't recommend getting off a structure, number one, anyway, and then if you're already struggling to eat, putting you in a swimming suit going on vacation is not the best idea. She was on Hawaii. They wouldn't let her go in the water. She was standing this tall in water. A wave hit her, broke her collarbone in half. She has pins in it now. Her surgeon said her bones look like sponge. This is the damage we do that we don't think about. This is the damage I didn't care about. I only cared about what was happening right now with my body and how it looked. I wasn't thinking about the long-term consequences. If any of you are on Instagram, this is all fully eating disorder stuff, though. You have to like eating disorder research, but it's just Dr. Nicole Hawkins. But this is a post I did recently. You can see the top picture, and that's a normal bone density scan of a 30-year-old woman. The next one is lack of period for 5 years. The next one is 15 years. So you can see how they completely lose their bones. So I get frustrated when some of the eating disorder facilities are taking patients horseback riding and skiing. No, you cannot do that with our patients. So one of my friends, her name is Dr. Pamela Carlton. She's a physician pediatrician in the Stanford area. She used to run their eating disorder program, and she's seen an epidemic of teenage girls developing osteopenia, pre-osteoporosis, just from dieting in their teenage years. So we used to say, well, if you've lost your period for 6 months, and we know boys do way more damage to their bones than girls in eating disorders. They used to say, well, if it's 6 months, you need to go get a bone density scan. Now we basically say, if you have a patient that's been dieting, and I don't care what their weight is, if they've been dieting chronically, they need to get a bone density scan, period. That's just kind of the recommendation. Okay, so probably someone you guys finally know, Jennifer Aniston. This is really old. It's from 1999. This is back when she was working out 8 hours a day. Her professional trainer, Kathy Kaler, fired her as a client because she said she couldn't endorse what she was doing. My patient that just broke her foot and her collarbone, she was swimming at Lifetime Gym in Sandy 8 hours a day. And what's fascinating to me is one manager approached her one time and one patron approached her one time and expressed concern, but no one else said anything to her. And she was so emaciated. And so in her mind, when people would stare at her, she says, well, because I thought I was fat, Nicole. I thought that's why people were staring at me. So we're going to talk about how even when Jennifer Aniston was working out 8 hours a day, that wasn't good enough. How about this? You guys even know what this is? If you came across this, or do you have a clue what this even is? So this is a Pro-Ana ad, but this one just happens to be in the pages of Vogue magazine. So if you haven't heard of Pro-Ana, Pro-Mia, Fitspiration, Thinspo, Thinspiration, there's 100 names. These are all sites that teach young girls and boys that having an eating disorder is a lifestyle. It teaches them tips and tricks of how to do their eating disorder better. And one of my patients, for example, she had so many followers. She was on Entertainment Tonight. Ford and Wolf Appliances advertised on her pro eating disorder site. And when she admitted, she told me, Nicole, under my tips and tricks section, I have information that I know will give people permanent kidney and liver damage if they do it. And I said, well, why would you do that? And she says, because I'm so miserable myself. I want other people to be miserable, because she was so depressed, right? So when I talk to my patients, most of them have seen these sites. Instagram is now the most common for these sites, but they can obviously be on Facebook, they can be on Twitter, but now the biggest site that's growing is on TikTok. So it's a big thing on TikTok where girls basically advertise they have an eating disorder, try to teach other girls how to have an eating disorder. So my daughter saw one of the TikTok videos and she like immediately ran upstairs and she's like, Mom, you've got to see this. So then I watched it. Guess what that did to her algorithm on TikTok? Then all of a sudden, every TikTok she's getting on her feed is eating disorder. So if you guys haven't seen the documentary Social Dilemma, like if you have kids, like just fool them and act like you're watching something else because they won't want to watch it. But I would highly recommend it. I kind of forced my teenage daughter to watch it, but at least the good thing that came out of it is she turned off all her notifications. But it's on Netflix, it's new, so it's current. It's a little silly in some parts, but I think it's worth it and worth the education piece. So this kind of shows the power of these sites. So a 14-year-old girl said, I was a few pounds overweight and needed support. I found a great site where everyone gave each other weight loss tips. I shared a photo of myself and got 47 comments, mostly saying how fat I was. It really motivated me. I lost 30 pounds with the help of these sites. So these sites are very, so back in 2006, Yahoo voluntarily pulled 60,000 of these sites off their server. And then the members of VITA, the National Eating Disorder Association, which I'm a member of, we all got together and we asked the site producers, please to not put their sites up. Of the 60,000, 60% were registered and maintained by men who presumably did not have eating disorders. Why are men creating fake sites acting like they were 14 and had an eating disorder? It's money, right? There's got to be a business involved, and the business is pornography. So basically, there's a niche in pornography where they like the very malnourished images. So I create a fake site, I act like I'm a 14-year-old girl, I start soliciting pictures from your daughter who's struggling with an eating disorder, and those end up on sites. So that's kind of the other, and that's happened to multiple patients of mine. So they say bigger's better, skinny's scary, but we all know that's not true. When celebrities gain weight, they're criticized, they're teased. Jessica Simpson got all the way up to a size 6 in this photo, and they say that she developed an eating disorder after this. That this was very triggering and very shaming to her, and it was really hard for her. I love this. It says there are 3 billion women who don't look like supermodels and only 8 who do. So the makers of Barbie, Mattel, they actually sued the Body Shop for making Barbie fat. But did you know ever since Barbie came out in 1959, they have made her thinner every time they've redone her until I guess the 2016 Barbie, which I'll show you. In one review of the Barbie's body type, the executives at Mattel actually said she had kinkles and she needed to be thinner. I know. So no one believes me when I talk about this, so I have to actually bring proof so you guys know what I'm talking about. So back in 1965, Mattel decided, besides putting a nice hairbrush and a pair of heels in Barbie's box, in the height of the women's movement, when we were getting equal opportunities, equal access to college and universities, Mattel decided we should put 2 really important items in Barbie's box. So this is what they put in. A bathroom scale set at 110 pounds, because according to Mattel, that is Barbie's happiest weight. And a book called How to Lose Weight. When you open this little Barbie book, it says don't eat. Now, bear with me for a minute, but this is where my feminist side will come out a little bit. If you want to take women's power away and take women's voices away, and this is true for men now too though, what do you get us to do? You get us to focus on our bodies and our weight and our size and our food And we literally stop forgetting about everything else. So I'll use myself as an example. When I was in high school, I didn't even take the psychology class. I was not going to be a psychologist. I took AP Political Science. I worked for the governor's campaign. I worked for a senator's campaign. My senior year, I went to Washington, D.C. That's what I was going to do. Fast forward, and I didn't have an eating disorder. Fast forward to my freshman year in college. So we know eating disorders develop at age 13 is a mode, the most common age, and 19. So puberty in college. Fast forward to college. I didn't go to a private college in Northern California. I instantly feel like I don't fit in. I don't feel smart enough. I'm not making friends. I'm really struggling. I'm feeling insecure, and I'm thinking, I have just ruined my life by going to this college. I shouldn't be here. This is over 30 years ago. They set all the freshman women down in orientation. This is what my administration says. Don't gain the freshman 15. You don't want the Benson butt. That was the name of our cafeteria. I'm already this hypersensitive, anxious kid. I feel like I don't belong at the school. I now hear my administration telling me to not gain the freshman 15, which I have a post about as well. It is not a thing. The freshman 15 is not a thing, and there's very recent data on that, by the way. But anyway, so for me, I decide, well, then I'm gonna lose 15 pounds, so then when I gain 15 pounds, I'll be even for the year, right? So that is literally how my eating disorder started. After that, probably until recently, I didn't think about politics again. The rest of my college years, all I thought about were the calories, how much I was running, how much I weighed. The scale dictated my entire life. I completely lost my voice. So in shrinking my body, I thought I was getting power, but no, I was not getting power. I was losing my voice, and I lost it then for years. So we have a woman here that's recovered from an eating disorder. She made what Barbie would look like if she was an actual person. And even Sports Illustrated put Barbie on the 50-year swimsuit edition. Now, some of the older people in the room, there's a few of you who can help me out here. The 2000 Millennium edition of the swimsuit, Sports Illustrated, had Carrie Otis on the cover. She was married to Mickey Rourke. She was in 9.5 weeks, Wild Orchid. She was on the cover. 3 weeks after being on the cover, she had open heart surgery to repair holes in her heart caused by anorexia. So she said, of course I looked good, I wasn't really doing good. Okay, so this study shows that little girls aged 5 to 7 years old, when able to play with an Emmy doll versus a Barbie doll, by just playing with the Barbie doll, it made them feel inadequate and not like their bodies. As a psychologist, this study fascinates me. Little girls played with a Mrs. Potato Head for 20 minutes or a Barbie doll. They were asked about what you wanted to be when you grew up. Just after 20 minutes of playing with the Barbie doll, little girls had less career aspirations. Now, I played with Barbie dolls. I don't think it impacted me at all. I don't know what this research is talking about, right? I just have no idea. So there is an excellent TED Talk called Teaching Girls Bravery, Not Perfection, that talks about kind of the socialization of girls and the socialization of women in society. And this one nailed me to a T, and so I'll just see how you guys, the men and the women, do in the room with this stat. So for men in the room, I am going to post a job ad at the Center for Change, and I am going to have 10 criteria for you to apply to my job. For the men, how many criteria do you guys think you need to meet to apply for my job? Any guesses? What the research says for men? It's about 60%. Men need to get a little more than half, and they feel totally comfortable applying for the job. Women in the room, same thing. I posted a job. I have 10 criteria. How many criteria do you have to meet to apply for my job? 100%. I didn't even know you could apply for a job if you didn't make 100%, right? Crazy. So anyway, it just talks about how we get socialized different. So this is the new curvy Barbie, one of them or two of them. I still can't determine which one is curvy. I'm thinking it's the blue hair and the yellow skirt. are supposed to represent the new ideal. So there's a lot on this slide. I only want you to pay attention to the second bullet point, that it costs $60,000 to airbrush the picture. I still have no idea how that's possible, but we'll talk about that. So this is Jenny McCarthy, or is it? It's not her, it's not her body, it's completely airbrushed, it's completely manipulated. Here's the problem. I can talk to most women until I am blue in the face. I can tell them this is not a real image. I can even go on YouTube, and if you guys search pepperoni pizza red bikini model, you can watch a slice of pepperoni pizza be airbrushed into a woman wearing a red bikini. You can watch it happen. I can do this until I'm blue in the face. Guess what it still does to women to look at this picture? Makes them feel like crap. It still triggers them, even when they know it's not real. So Katie Couric, she had an eating disorder in college. She is now recovered. When she was hosting the CBS Nightly News, they told her she was fat, and they wanted to airbrush all her material. She said no, they did it anyway. So I thought Faith Hill looked fine before. I guess even to be a plus size model, you have to be airbrushed now. Kelly Clarkson said she didn't even wear the purple shirt and white pants. The top picture is Victoria's Secret, what came out as the perfect body. Luckily it got pulled. The bottom picture is what women said it should look like. I love this. I purposely don't follow the Kardashians, but I do appreciate this. It says, ladies, how to lose 10 pounds in 10 days after having a baby. This is how we do it. We just go get airbrushed. Look at even the little baby. His hand was all messed up before. They fixed it. So that is how you lose the baby weight. Okay, so this is going back to that $60,000 price tag. Now, please don't ask me any questions on this because I still have no idea how this is possible. I just saw her on Good Morning America and the Today Show talking about this. Same model, images were taken within the same period. This one, both are airbrushed, but after this one, the retouching bill was $84,000. We're all in the wrong industry, right? I don't even know how that's possible. So Ralph Lauren fired her and said she was too fat to model in the retouching bill. So again, and she's not a model anymore. So once she kind of hit 20, they said she was too large. Okay, here's an ad. What is the product? So years ago, when I saw ads I didn't like in Body Image Group, we'd literally get out our pens and our pencil for paper and we'd write to the editors, or we'd write to the publishers, or we'd write to the company and say, we're not buying your product, we don't like your ad. Well, now we can actually hashtag things. And there's a group of twins in Utah, the Kite sisters, that both have PhDs, and they have the hashtag not buying it. And if you hashtag not buying it on things, people notice really quick, companies. So that's what happened with this ad. And so it was promptly pulled. Any guesses on what the product is? The shoes, that would be the best guess because it's actually not a picture, right? Or a couch, that's what I would think, because I am looking for a new couch, so maybe it's that. It's a perfume ad. So I try to teach my patients and my daughter how to be immediate, how to look at this and go, wow, how are they trying to trigger me? How is this ad a perfume ad? How are they trying to get me to buy perfume? And actually, as a consumer, I'm so not happy with their ad, I am purposely not going to buy the product now, right? We see ads, and nothing against the men in the room, but women are 86% of the buying power in this country. We make the decisions, and all the men are, you're shaking your head, you know, right? If we don't like things, we shouldn't buy it. We shouldn't support these companies. They will start to listen. So poor Target, they tried so hard. They did not understand what the thigh gap was. So they made a new thing, and it's the crotch gap. And this came out in all of your mailboxes 2 summers ago. The cutest thing about this model, though, if you look at her arms, they're super long. She went on Ellen's talk show and wore fake arms down to her ankles and shook Ellen's hand. So at least she had some fun with it. Okay, so we're going to go back to Jennifer Aniston, back when she was working out 8 hours a day, and for the younger people in the room, back when she was married to Brad Pitt. So the only thing that's real is her head and her hand, because they wanted her ring in the picture. It's not her body. Now, she sued them. I would too. If I was working out 8 hours a day and they said I didn't look good enough to be on Redbook magazine, I might be a little unhappy. Same with Julia Roberts, sued over that image. Same with Kate Winslet, she sued over this image. Now, if any of you remember back in 2004, they all lost the lawsuits. And the reason they lost the lawsuits is amongst us, the general public, we're all aware these images are fake. But are we? Are our kids aware? And how about this movie that is going to be 31 years old this summer? Some of you are feeling old, huh? 31 years old. Now you can all look at that picture and you can tell that is not Julia Roberts' body. You can tell that the head is just placed there. If you've seen this 31-year-old movie, it is not her body in the movie either. They use body doubles throughout the movie. It is such an old movie now. If I gave you guys that as a homework assignment, you could watch it and you would all be like, oh, yeah, that's not her body. These are bad body doubles. My point is this is now common, but the technology is so good, you would never know. And they do this with males and females. This is not just females. Everything we see is perfect on the screen and on TV and everything, right? So how much media are our kids viewing? All these stats are pre-COVID. So I know I went to my son's child care check at 12 during COVID, and his pediatrician looked at me and said, how much media is Michael viewing a day? I said, 6 hours and 32 minutes, I think. No, probably 16 hours a day. I have no idea, because he's homeschooling, right? He's zooming into class. I have no idea what my son is doing during the day, right? I don't know. I know it's more than 6 hours, though. So with teenage girls, the research now is saying they are connected to their devices 19 of the 24 hours a day. That doesn't mean they're awake looking at them. That just means in the middle of the night, if they wake up, what are they doing? They're looking, they're checking. So I just did a post last week, and the New York Times just did a story about this last week, and that was my post, was summarizing their story. But we're seeing an epidemic of teenage girls developing eating disorders during the pandemic. They're saying, yes, it's related to them being out of school and not having structure, but they're saying the number one cause is Instagram. And that the more they're on social media, it's basically fueling this problem. So we know with old research, after only 3 minutes of looking at these type of images, the majority of women feel depressed, shameful, guilty, worse about their bodies. So most of the women in this room, just by seeing these pictures, even though I'm making fun of them, even though I'm criticizing them at times or pointing out things, they make you feel bad. They make you feel bad. I've been recovered 29 years. I still look at that Shape magazine and go, how did she get that stomach? It's a computer-generated stomach. Anyone older in the room remember Janet Jackson's abs in the 90s? She had amazing abs. I had a picture of her cut out. It was like my eating disorder inspiration or something. To come to find out, guess how Janet Jackson got those abs? She bought them. She had ab implants and liposuction around them. I guess I could have had Janet Jackson's abs, right? So we know that young girls are usually on the media about 7 hours a day, but again, this is all pre-pandemic. So I don't have a lot of current research past that. I do a whole presentation on social media and eating disorders, but I just wanted to talk about a couple slides, because this, again, as a psychologist, is fascinating. 20-minute exposure time. This half of the room, you guys look at a rainforest cat. This half of the room, I just put you on Facebook for 20 minutes. And then I assess your body image. People that looked at the rainforest cat, you guys are good. This side of the room, you're all triggered. You feel bad. You're not happy with your bodies after just 20 minutes. What happens after 8 hours, after 9 hours, after 10 hours? How is it impacting us, right? The reason I started talking about social media is I know when I got a Facebook account, I found myself getting triggered all the time. It seemed like all of my friends went to Hawaii all the time. All of their husbands gave them flowers all the time. And all of their kids won awards. And I noticed, wow, I'm super triggered and I feel really confident as a person. How is this impacting my patients? And sure enough, it does impact our patients. So this is kind of like a once-in-a-lifetime study. Dr. Ann Becker, she's a Harvard sociologist. She's been studying the people of Fiji for decades. So in 1995, the average BMI in Fiji was a 29. The obesity BMI is a 30. When she asked women, how do you feel about your bodies? 97% of women said they liked their bodies. They had no rates of eating disorders, and they only had 3% of women doing disordered eating. In the US, for 19 to 24-year-olds, what percentage of that age group has disordered eating? 80. They got our Western satellite systems, which meant they could watch what we watch on TV. She went back 3 years later. Their rates of eating disorders were equivalent to ours, just after 3 years. Now, I don't think the media, I did my dissertation on the media and eating disorders. I don't think the media causes eating disorders, but I think when you think about like genetics loads the gun, the environment pulls the trigger. For a lot of people, the media, social media, comparison, and then we're going to talk about dieting can pull the trigger. So for women in this country, in course of a year, about 90% of women go on a diet. For men in the room, you guys are much harder to figure out. You're 47 to 72%. The reason is if men go on the diet, they don't feel the need to post about it, to advertise it. They just do it. Where women tend to post and talk about it, right? Here's the problem. 90% of all diets fail after 1 year. So I go on a diet, I lose weight, awesome. What happens? I gain it all back. That's just a little bit more. That's okay, guys. I'm gonna do it again. So I go on my next diet, I lose more weight. Now what happens? Oh crap. What's gonna happen if I spend 5 years dieting? I am slowly dieting up. And so you can kind of see the rates. And this says they gain all the way back plus 10%. Actually, meta-analysis are saying, no, they're gaining up to 40% back. So I lose 10, I gain back 14. So I'm not naive to, the obesity problems, and they keep on saying 60% of Americans are obese. And so back in 2006, our government decided to fund, and the NIH, to fund the largest dieting study out there. And the goal is we're going to look at every single diet out there, and then we're going to find which diet is the most effective, and then based on that diet, we're going to change the food pyramid. So very smart, like a good way to approach it. So they studied Atkins, Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, Nutrisystem, Slim Fast, you name it, every diet out there. And what they found, first quarter results, all the diets worked. Everyone was losing weight. In fact, I can tell you, if anyone wants to drop a lot of weight really fast, what diet does that? Anyone know? The Atkins diet. People that went on Atkins lost the most weight the fastest. Oh, but guess what diet made people gain the most weight back the fastest? The Atkins diet. So they followed all the diets. At the end of the year, all the groups were higher than they started. So they could not recommend a diet. They did not change the food pyramid. They added a runner to get that movement piece in. They added a runner and they changed the colors, and that's all they did. Because I think we all know that diets don't work. But I always joke, if I wanted to make a lot of money, especially since I have a Ph.D., all I have to do is write a diet book. It doesn't even have to work. I just have to put diet in the name, and what's going to happen? We're all going to buy it, right? So we see by age 6, little girls are already worried about their weight. 40 to 60% of elementary girls are concerned about their weight, are worried about getting too fat. By 7th grade, we see that 56% like the way they look. 80% of children who are 10 years old are afraid of becoming fat. And look at this. When asked, 51% of girls aged 9 to 10 stated they did feel better about themselves when they were on a diet. So when you look at some of these stats, did anyone hear what Forever 21 did? I'm not sad they're in bankruptcy. But what they did for every order of plus size clothing that went out to teenagers, they put an Atkins bar in the box. If they got normal size clothing, they did not get an Atkins bar. So, and when they got caught on this, they said it was all a mistake. They don't know how it happened, right? So if we look at these rates really quick, I'm going to give you the year of these stats. In 2016, 34% of 5-year-old girls were dieting on their own. Not parents putting them on the diet, but little girls deciding they needed to lose weight. The other two stats are from the year 1999. So really, we know about 90% of little girls are dieting. When we look at little boys, up to 28% are using dieting, and little boys are more common to use exercise. So my son that's 13, in his small class, 5 boys are dieting and actively trying to lose weight right now. And then one of my friends, I mean, she should listen to me, has her son on a diet. So she gives him every day, and he's a football player, for lunch, she gives him California rolls in a little like ice pack thing for his lunch every day. What do you think my little buddy Sebastian does with his California rolls every day? Yeah, he throws them away. He throws them away, and then he goes and takes food from other kids. He's not going to eat California rolls every day. His poor mom has no idea, but I'm not crossing that bridge with her. I think I'll stay out of it, right? So we see that up to 57% of high school girls, now listen to this, 57% of high school girls crash diet, fast, self-induced vomiting, diet pills, or laxatives. 57%. By college, it's 80%. And we know that overweight girls are more likely than normal weight girls to do this. So individuals with eating disorders are more likely to be normal weight or overweight, not underweight. So 2 of my patients in the past 2 weeks have went to the emergency room. Both emergency room doctors, in different, one in Bountiful, one here in Provo, told my 2 different patients, you don't look like you have an eating disorder. And then proceeded to tell them their weight and say, see, you're not underweight. So eating disorders don't have a look. They can come in all shapes and sizes. And we know little girls are more afraid of losing weight than they are nuclear war, cancer, or losing a parent. So these studies completely show why dieting does not work. Okay? Stice and all looked at 700 girls over a 4-year period. Girls that dieted in 9th grade were 3 times more likely to be overweight by 12th grade. Field and all looked at 15,000 teenage girls, found girls who dieted frequently were 12 times more likely to binge than non-dieters. Is there any wonder we now have a diagnosis called binge eating disorder? So remember when I introduced myself and I said I had anorexia, had bulimia, and I had binge eating disorder? Because when I had anorexia, after a while, guess what I started to do? I started to binge. So then for me, I started to purge. Some of my patients don't start to purge, they just stay binging. I eventually stopped purging, but I was still trying to restrict it in that restrictive mindset, so then I was still binging. Whoops, I don't know what that one's doing, but you still read it. So Stice and all looked at 1,000 high school girls over a 4-year period, found their initial dietary restraint score, how much we dieted, strongly predicted the onset of depression 4 years later. I'll take it off that slide, I'll talk about this for a minute. So we know with eating disorder patients, up to 80% of them have an anxiety disorder first. They may not even know. I had no idea I had an anxiety disorder. I was a worrier, I was a perfectionist, I got straight A's, I was a people pleaser, I hated conflict, I still hate conflict. I just like, we talk about temperaments, I was a turtle. Turtles move through the world slowly, they look at everything, they're highly sensitive to their environment, they want lots of information before they make a decision, but if you hurt a turtle, what do? And then they get in their shell and good luck getting me out, right? So that's turtles versus a hare. Those of you that work in substance abuse, you work with a lot of hares. They're the rabbits. They're impulsive. They're always looking for that next rush. They're always like looking for adrenaline. They hate being bored. They love conflict. They have no problem with it. They are always kind of thrill seekers. They're out there. So we know a large percentage of our anorexic patients are turtles. They're anxious. So for me, I'm this anxious kid, I'm this worrier. When I start restricting, guess what it does to my brain? It calms it. I immediately felt better. I felt more in control. If you guys don't have my temperament, you go on a diet, you get irritable and cranky. No, not me. I feel so much calmer. I feel so much better. But then over time, my anxiety started getting worse. So I had to do more and more behaviors to bring my anxiety down. So the next thing I know, I have this full-blown eating disorder. Well, sit in an eating disorder for 4 years. Guess what's going to happen? Or sit dieting for 4 years. Then I got major depression. I was never actively suicidal, but I was passively suicidal. Like my patients, for example, won't wear their seatbelts. They do things like that, where they're not trying to kill themselves, but if a bus hit them, they wouldn't care. So I always tell my patients, the good news is I'm not depressed anymore. I don't have an eating disorder anymore, but guess what I still have? I still have anxiety. I'm still an anxious mess. I just learned to cope with it differently. So again, we look at these rates for 14 and 15-year-olds. Dieting was the most important predictor of developing an eating disorder. Those who dieted moderately were 5 times more likely to develop an eating disorder. Those who practiced extreme restrictions were 18 times more likely to develop an eating disorder. So when you look at like our wrestlers, you know the highest sport for eating disorders is male jockeys. And then for male jockeys, for example, and they're being sued, they're suing the Jockey Federation for this, but in their locker rooms, they have a stall with a disposal in it because they encourage purging of their food. But if you keep on purging, you're going to have a seizure. And if you have a seizure as a jockey, guess what? You can't race anymore. Now you see where the lawsuit's going. You condone this, you give us a disposal in our locker room, but now you tell us we can't do it. So I want to talk about intuitive eating for a minute. You guys have maybe heard about it. It gets very, very common, and it's kind of mainstream right now because there's so much anti-diet culture. It actually has 10 components, but I usually talk about the 8 because when I came to work at the Center for Change 22 years ago, we were the only program in the country doing intuitive eating. I was not an intuitive eater. I had recovered for 7 years. I had never even heard of intuitive eating. I had no idea what it was. So my first day of work is actually challenge day, happens to be my first day of work. So on challenge day for the 3 snacks, our patients have to eat the same challenging food. So it could be donuts, it could be donut challenge day, and you do 3 donuts. Or it could be candy bar challenge day, or it could be cereal. Well, my first day of work was cheesecake challenge day. So I'm supposed to, back then we were only 16 beds, now we're 58, but back then I'm shadowing the patients and I have to do everything they have to do. So excuse my language, but by my second piece of cheesecake, I told the dietitian, there is no way in hell I'm eating another piece of cheesecake. And here is my dream job, but I'm looking at these people, and no offense, in Podunk, Oregon, going, they don't know what they're doing. They are feeding the patients junk food, and this is horrible. I just was like shocked. Well, the dietitian that started intuitive eating at the center, she's now a famous dietitian in California, and she sat me down, she's recovered from anorexia, and she says, Nicole, you just need to try it. And as you can see, I'm very transparent. I'm never going to ask a patient to do something if I'm afraid to do it myself. So I learned as a recovered person to be an intuitive eater. And you have to understand, I had grown up never having sugar cereal in my life, never having white bread, because my mom had an eating disorder, never having those things. So I kind of thought, as a recovered adult, why would I start? Right? I couldn't really understand why I would be eating this variety of food. So I get that it's like swimming sometimes against the tide. So number 1 is no scales. We're not weighing our food or we're not measuring it out. But we have to start somewhere. So let me explain. So I worked with a 3rd grade little boy that was obese. He was being bullied at school and he was suicidal. So his mom brought him in. I had him do a food journal, which usually I don't do, but I wanted to kind of see what he was eating. And he wrote down for breakfast, he ate 3 bowls of cereal for breakfast. When we measured it out, he was eating 3 Tupperware bowls or 12 servings of cereal for breakfast. So we had to teach him normal portion sizes. If you guys go to the Cheesecake Factory, is that normal portion sizes? No, right? When we go out to eat, because the diet industry and restaurant industries have learned that when we go out to eat, it's a special occasion. And if 90% of us are always dieting, when we go out to eat, we want to be treated. Well, back in the 70s, we used to go out to eat once a month. How much do we go out to eat now? Like, I don't even want to admit how much I go out to eat now, right? It's sometimes once a day. So portion sizes are bigger. So we like to do portion size training. So, but not where you're measuring it out. You can eyeball it. So even with our patients, we have scoops they can get from Amazon that kind of just scoop out a portion size. So we learn what normal portion sizes are. The next one is no label reading and calorie counting. I used to obsess about every label. So unless you have like diabetes or some kind of medical condition, I don't want you tracking your calories. I don't want you, thank you. I don't want you, 10 more minutes or what? Oh, I ended 2? Okay, I'll be really quick. We'll go down to no, I thought I ended at 2:10, so I thought I had plenty of time. Okay, no good and bad foods. Oh, do you have 2 minutes? Okay, good. Okay, I won't rush as much. This is important. Okay, no good and bad food. This is the hardest one on the list. This is one that I even, in a sense, get harassed. So my son is on a competitive soccer team. So when it was my day for snack rotation, I brought a sleeve of Oreos and Capri Suns. Guess what happened? I had 2 parents request I be taken off the snack rotation because I was feeding the kids junk food. So I get that this one feels hard. Even at my son's private school, I'm allowed to bring in, not with COVID, but before COVID, I'm allowed to bring in birthday treats on his birthday, as long as they don't contain sugar. If you guys can come up with some birthday treats I can bring that don't contain sugar for little boys, let me know, right? So I get that this one is hard. And I even sit and think, and this is probably why I should take a nutrition class. How does broccoli equate to Cheetos? How are those equal? I have no idea how they're equal, but I still eat Cheetos, right? So this is learning that all foods fit. All foods are good in moderation. I used to be obsessed with carrot cake. So instead of eating carrot cake, I would eat a bag of carrots, thinking that was going to fulfill my hunger for carrot cake. Did it work? No, I just ate a bag of carrots and then the carrot cake. It didn't work, right? So all foods fit in moderation. Exercise that you enjoy. In my eating disorder, I was a runner. I ran at night in cemeteries in Northern California. Again, my prefrontal cortex was not working. I wasn't thinking about my safety, and I was impulsive. I wanted to run when I wanted to run. How do I feel about running now? I absolutely hate it. You will never see me running unless someone is chasing me. I don't like, right? I mean, some of us who don't like running. I don't like going to gyms. I find gyms highly triggering environments for me. You find movement that you like. Find movement. I'll tell my husband this, but the whole reason I bought him a dog is so he can walk the dog, right? Find movement that we enjoy, that we want to do, that is enjoyable. So for me, going on walks, walking the dog is enjoyable. I'm not going to do other things. And finding things that we can incorporate into our life. Tasting and enjoying food. I used to convince myself that non-fat ranch salad dressing tasted just as good as the real thing. It doesn't. It tastes like water. We need fat in our food to make us feel full. If they take fat out of the food, they're putting sugar in the food. So eat the normal food. The other thing to know about eating disorder patients, I would see a piece of pizza, I would feel guilty about eating it. Before I even took a bite of it, guess how my stomach felt? It hurt. Why? Because I have more receptors for anxiety in my stomach than I do in my brain. If I'm already feeling guilty about eating something with gluten, then I actually eat it, I am going to feel like crap. Because I'm already feeling like I shouldn't eat it, and the anxiety alone is going to upset my stomach. So that's why the eating disorder patients, we start eating in smaller and smaller little windows and amounts of food because it feels safe and it doesn't hurt them. And same with if you work with kids with ARFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, which is what my son, he actually is kind of over it now. But we were at a period where he was only eating 5 foods. And that's like chicken nuggets, a hamburger, ham and cheese sandwich, like very plain, because their window of foods gets very, very small. Okay, the next one, this is for all of us. And this is why intuitive eating doesn't work that well with eating disorder patients. The receptor in our stomach that goes to our brain. So we have receptors in our stomach and brain. Whenever we see prescription pills being sent out for weight loss, they're usually targeting the receptor in our stomach or the receptor in our brain. Because what we know from the research is if you're an undereater or if you've been an overeater, those receptors don't fire correctly. That means we can't feel our hunger and fullness. This is why I could binge on large amounts of food and never feel satisfied. Because my receptor wasn't working. I never felt full. The research tells us it takes about 90 days of consistent eating for those receptors to start working. So that's why it can be so hard, is we have to be consistent. So what we teach our patients is eating 3 meals and 3 snacks a day. When people say breakfast is the most important meal of the day, it truly is for our metabolism. There is one study out there, it's through the National Registry. They have over 10,000 people. This research looks at people that have successfully lost weight and kept it off. So I'll tell you the 2 most important things these people do. You can already guess number 1, they eat breakfast. Because if anyone in the room wants to gain weight, I'll tell you the diet to go on. It's called the sumo wrestler diet. You restrict, and this is what my dad does. You would think he'd listen to me, and he's trying to lose weight, but this is what my dad does. He restricts all day long, only drinks black coffee throughout the day. And then dinner comes, and guess what he does at dinner? He eats a large amount of food, and then he grazes throughout the evening. That is the recipe to gain weight. If I took what my dad ate during the night and just spread it out during the day, I could probably get him to lose weight or at least maintain weight and not gain weight. So eating breakfast is critical. The second most important thing these people did to lose weight and to keep it off, they walked 30 minutes a day. They didn't run, they didn't jog, they didn't skip. They just walked. So think about it right now. If I could just ask you guys to do 2 things. Could you guys all eat breakfast? Could you all walk 30 minutes a day? And in the research, they even found it didn't have to be 30 consecutive minutes. It could be 10, 10, and 10. Could we all do that? And so I want you to think, when we think about this, when we look at the true people, that 2% of the research that keeps the weight off and doesn't gain it back, they make lifestyle changes they can actually maintain. And so that becomes the goal. And so I try to talk to my patients about eating disorders. Eating disorders is not a way to lose weight and keep it off. That is not a lifestyle we can maintain. It's a lifestyle that's going to kill us. Okay, well, I have only about time for 3 minutes of questions. So if anyone has a quick question, we'll go there and then there. Go ahead.
What are your thoughts about intermittent fasting?
I have so many thoughts about intermittent fasting. I could take an hour. The research has really shown, yes, you will drop weight, but you are going to slow down your metabolism, for sure. You just cannot avoid the science of that, right? So, but yeah, you can definitely lose weight on it, but then your metabolism slows. Go ahead.
How do we approach this with our daughters?
I think it's a great question, and very gently, and I try to model appreciating my body. There's been a lot of research that says, we have to love our bodies and all this. I didn't love my body. I liked my eating disorder body better. So then it was about accepting my body And maybe it could actually be about just appreciating our bodies and that all of our bodies are different. But I like to talk to my daughter about the research and dieting, and she's in a sorority now at the U, and I just did this presentation for all of the sororities just to try to help them, because I think knowledge is power. But sometimes if we hear it from our parent, we don't appreciate it, right? Yeah, we don't appreciate it. Go ahead.
Are they still pushing to get orthorexia listed on the DSM?
So somehow I became one of the leading researchers in the country on orthorexia. Just like side note, the Center for Change participated in a big study with orthorexia with my friend Tom Dunn that's out of Colorado. They are still pushing it. There's 3 different criteria. For those of you that aren't aware, orthorexia is like where you're obsessed with clean eating and you have all your food. So I had a little bit of my eating disorder where I drive an extra hour to buy organic food, even though I couldn't afford it in college. So you're really, and it's kind of that farm to the table, but you get obsessed with it. You can't eat out at restaurants, you can't eat processed food. They're still pushing to get it added. I don't think it will get added though. I think they're just gonna put it in the continuum of eating disorders, is what I think. Usually those people don't care as much about body image, but all the orthorexics I work with, especially the professional athletes, I think are obsessed with overexercise too, which is not even in the criteria for orthorexia so far. So anyway, we'll see. Okay, well I better go. If any of you guys have any other questions, you can email me. Yeah. Amazing, yes. There. So, just choose one of my